an accounting lab, and we had that usually on Thursday afternoon. And there were some carpenters putting on some doors down the hall from where our accounting lab was, and they were making what he thought was a considerable amount of noise, and I think it was slightly disturbing to us. So he opened the door and said, "You could make more noise if you got a bigger hammer." And that was typical Pappy hate, I thought, for those of us that have had him. The law itself is fascinating. That's a philosophical topic unto itself. One of the things that I like about it is the way the law is living. It is applied to real life situations. You know, all I do is employment work. Whether I'm representing someone who has filed a lawsuit against a company or against the federal government. I sue the federal government just about every day. The post office is one of my favorite clients to sue. And I also represent a lot of small businessmen, and one of the things that I like about that is that it gives you the tools to be able to resolve people's real problems. I would like to think, and I tell my clients, regardless of whether they're a business or an individual, that there are better ways to resolve disputes than going to court, because courts are very inefficient, they're very expensive, and not only that, you never know what's going to happen once that case gets to that jury. You may think you have them figured out, and Lord and behold, they're going to return a verdict right smack against you. One thing about a jury, or a trial to a jury, the jury does not kiss both sides at the same time. One of you will get kissed and the other one won't. And the winner will get kissed and the loser will probably walk out without a smooch of any sort. So I usually try to suggest to my clients that maybe we ought to try to either go to mediation before or try to come up with a resolution that we feel we can live with, rather than going through and the whole expense of a trial. Because the only ones that are winners during a trial are the lawyers themselves. Before I open the case, I always prepare what suits and ties I'm going to wear for every day. I will usually start out with a dark suit. It's always going to be, I always wear a white shirt. I'm not going to take a chance on wearing a blue shirt, offending some jurors' ideas of what a lawyer should be. I think they expect a white shirt type attorney. And most of my stuff's in federal court, and I got used to dress codes when I first started practicing in the federal courts in 1973. And at that time, they were fairly black or navy blue suit or dark blue suit for men. And I still think it carries over. I would not wear a sport coat and a pair of dress slacks to court. I'm strictly a suit type. I will select the second day. During my case, I'm always wearing stronger colors and stronger ties. When the plaintiff puts on, when the defendant puts on, if I'm doing the plaintiff side, that means we're the guy that's suing, or the woman that's suing. Then I'm more apt to get softer colors when the other side's putting on their case to differentiate myself from them. And then I always have butterflies until I open my mouth for the first time in any case. All these years that I've been in trial, 29, almost 30 years, I always have a slight case of butterflies until I start talking. And after that, it becomes very natural. The courtroom to me is just no different than an office setting. You know, if you really take the analogy of when you're in a courtroom, kind of look at it as if you're in your church or temple of your choice. When the minister or the rabbi comes in, the priest, you stand up. I mean, when the service is over and the clergyman leaves, you basically do the same thing. And that's basically the same thing in court. Judge comes in with a black robe, and you stand up. They tell you to sit down. You go through the ritual. At the end of the ritual, everybody stands up and the judge leaves. To analogize it to a church service, it's very similar. Except they have a little more power over you. Well, one of the things that it doesn't matter whether you're in business or law. I think one thing works. You're part of a team. If you're working with someone on a trial, you're going to be part of a team. You're going to have at least a paralegal with you, maybe another set of lawyers or two. And I've tried cases where there have been 2 or 3 attorneys and sometimes 1 or 2 paralegals. So you have to be able to relate to those people that work with you on that team. And I think one of the other things that I've always found interesting, at least from my perspective, is I am not interested in hiring yes people. I want people who give me the correct answers and will even challenge some of my thoughts. I don't want clones, Ralph clones. Ralph clones are a danger, because then all you're doing is you might as well just put yourself in the mirror and that's what you're hiring. I think when you're interested in hiring decisions or how are you going to make your organization grow, be it a business or a law firm, you have to hire the kind of people that give you the critical thinking and feedback that you need, not what you want to hear. And many times what I want to hear and what I need are two distinct categories, and I'm not scared to hire the kind of people that tell me off in the least bit. I know I have a paralegal who's been with me 8 years. Many times her and I have vociferous disagreements, and we talk it over, and the end objective is to make a better product for the client. How do we win the lawsuit and do it faster and cheaper? You know, I was looking up the dictionary definition of it, and basically the dictionary definition leaves me blank, because it talks about achieving fame, wealth, and rank. Well, that's only one dimension of it. The only question is, I ask myself, success would have to be a little more than that for me, and I would probably define it as, have I made the world a better place as a result of the privileges that I've had or the honors that have been bestowed upon me? I think you almost have to be truly successful, you have to give of yourself to whatever organization of your choice, be it religious, be it civic, or whatever. I also believe that those of us who are, quote, successful, owe it to the next generation to mentor them and to bring them along. For everyone, like someone mentored me. I've been fortunate, I've had mentors. I think it is my duty to likewise mentor young attorneys that are coming up. And also get them used to the idea that public service is not a bad word. It's a good idea.
I started real young. I was very fortunate that my father was a hardworking individual, and you know, I look back and I look at the work ethics that I've had, and I look back at what my father taught me. And one thing is honesty and hard work. My dad was a blue-collar worker and worked out at Holloman Air Force Base. And so when I was very young, I had an opportunity to earn some extra money. And when I was about 10 years old, I started working for one of the small children's apparel shops there in Alamogordo. And I'd go down after school and sweep the store out and take care of mopping the floors, things like that. And then on the weekends, I'd come down and do the major jobs and wash windows, things like that. That was one of the first jobs I had at about 10 years, when I was 10 years old. And then I also had a little clientele. I'd cut grass, and I had certain permanent jobs. On the weekends, I'd go around and I'd cut grass. So I was able to earn extra money and support what I wanted to do when I was very young. It was a big transition, you know. I graduated from high school in '64, and when I was playing basketball in high school, you know, at that time, a big center was 6'4", and we played against some pretty good sized athletes in high school, but when I got into college, it was completely different. I mean, your power forwards in college were 6'8", you know, your centers were 6'10", the guards were 6'2", 6'3", and I came out of high school at about 5'11", so it was a challenge when I went into college ball. But what I found, you know, you really had, the competition was very keen, and you really had to apply yourself, and that was the important thing. And I think the other thing is, of course, is teamwork. You learn that. But in college, I think the most thing that I had to really understand is just you know, what that competition is out there today, and that's what you're going to be faced with as you get out into the business world. When I started over here, of course, we didn't have the nice facilities that we have today. You know, New Mexico State University is an ag college and a big engineering college, and the business school back in the mid-'60s and late '60s was just starting to grow, and we really didn't have the facilities. And I can remember that I spent a lot of my classes in the old Army barracks that they had, which now is where we have a parking lot now right outside of Guthrie Hall. But I can tell you that in March and April, when the wind would start blowing, I can remember afternoon classes there that the wind was blowing, and you couldn't, if you were in the back of the room, you couldn't hardly see the front of the room and the instructor because of all of the dirt coming up through the cracks and things in the floor. So air conditioners. You know, I don't know if we had air conditioners in them back in those days. You know, it was always, we were there trying to get an education. I don't guess we're really worried about that. The first day that I showed up for work, well, the president met me in the lobby, invited me into his office, and we went in, and I spent about an hour or so with him and kind of getting an idea of what he was really looking for. And after we talked for a while, well, I told him, I said, well, I'm ready to go to work. I said, you know, you want to show me where my office is? And he kind of looked at me, pushed himself back away from the desk, and he says, office? He says, what do you know about banking? He says, all that degree did was get your foot in the door. He said, if you want to be a banker, I'll teach you how to be a banker, but you got to do it my way. He says, come on, I want to show you where your office is. So we walked across the lobby of the bank, opened a little gate and went out back behind the teller line, and then there was another door, and opened that door, and I looked in, and there was about 7 or 8 ladies sitting over there, had their back to us, and there was one chair right next to the one on the end, and he pointed and he said, that's your office right there. And I looked over there, and I really didn't know what the young ladies were doing, but sooner or later I found out that they were filing checks, and so that's where my first office was, and my first responsibility was sitting over there and manually filing checks based on the signature of the customer. One thing that I've always tried to do, and it goes back to the ethics that my father taught me when I was a very young boy, is that you know, you want to do a good job, you want to be fair to people. But as my dad always told me, he said, you never ask anybody to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And that's something that I do at the bank. I mean, whatever the job is that needs to be done, then I'll do it. I mean, if I need to sweep off the front porch and we don't have somebody available, I don't have a problem sweeping off the front porch. One of the things that we do in our organization now, we're talking about popcorn, but with the new bank we just built, we built a coffee shop right in the middle of the lobby. And again, it's completely opposite of what the big banks want. They don't want customers in the bank, but I'm just the opposite, and I've said this many times. As I go around the community, I invite people to come drink coffee with